Welcome to the Real Estate Espresso Podcast, your morning shot of what's new in the world of real estate investing. I'm your host, Victor Menashe. Today's another AMA episode, that is, Ask Me Anything. I love to answer your questions, and if you have a question you think is going to be of broad interest, send it in. I'll answer it live on the air. Send your questions to victor@victorjm.com. That's victor@victorjm.com. Today's question comes from Gonzalo in New York. He writes, "First, I'd like to thank you for all your insight and knowledge that you share on the podcast and in your book. Both informative and inspiring. I exited a bridge loan 2 years ago in the middle of the pandemic. Because of the pandemic, one of the bank's requirement was to hold a cash reserve of $110,000. I agreed with the understanding that the funds would be released after 12 months or once the pandemic was over. Although there haven't been any late payments or missed payments, the bank requested to see an income and expense report for the last 3 months. I shared the information with them, which included several of the units being rented on Airbnb. I've abided by New York City rent guidelines, and I've been doing a 30-day minimum stay only. The bank now refuses to release the funds, stating that I'm in default because I'm renting on Airbnb. I was totally unaware of how KeyBank would scrutinize my loan. Ideally, I'd like to continue using Airbnb as it yields higher income. Here's a few facts. It's a 16-unit rent-stabilized building. It's a 10-year fixed-rate loan, and it's got a prepayment penalty on the loan. Can you offer any advice on what course of action would be best to take? Thanks in advance for your help." Well, Gonzalo, thank you for the kind words, and this is a great question. It's also a cautionary tale. First of all, I think you need to get in touch with a lawyer who can best advise you on how to respond to the notice of default you receive from the bank, negotiate the loan with your bank, and with Freddie Mac, who in this instance is acting as the agency behind the lender. I don't want to be in the position of offering you legal advice. That's certainly not my role. What I can share is my experience in operating and financing short-term and medium-term rentals. I've been operating short-term rentals and medium-term rentals since 2008, long before Airbnb was in existence. Back in the early days, even then, lenders wanted to see long-term leases. The reasoning was that a long-term lease offers the lowest risk profile for them as a lender. Your loan agreement, at least the excerpt that you forwarded me, is pretty clear that the minimum they'll accept is a 6-month lease. Fast forward to today, where there's over 660,000 listings on Airbnb in the United States. Some of these are no doubt in violation of their loan agreements as well. But if the property's commercial, you really need to be in a proper loan product. Otherwise, I believe you're taking a risk of the lender declaring the note to be in default. In my experience, most conventional lenders do not allow short-term or even medium-term rentals under the terms of their loans. These lenders have experienced that there's a higher degree of income variation, particularly if there's a seasonal component to the demand. That higher income variation translates into higher risk for the lender, which is why they don't like it. When we acquired our own short-term rental portfolio near Banff National Park, we initially financed the project using fairly expensive short-term bridge debt along with an equity fund that we formed for the purpose of acquiring the portfolio. We did not seek permanent financing to coincide with the purchase. That was for 2 reasons. Number one, lenders have special programs for short-term rentals that require significantly longer periods in underwriting. There was no way we would get the financing in place in time for closing. None of those lenders would be fast enough. And secondly, the lenders all wanted to see an operating history, which at the time we did not have in that specific company. We had it elsewhere, but not in that specific entity. We spoke with countless lenders who all declined the loan because it didn't meet their loan criteria. We finally found a single lender that would provide a fairly low loan-to-value ratio and allow short-term rentals. However, they would allow secondary financing behind their loan in order to get to a higher loan-to-value ratio, and that's ultimately what we did. We put some private second mortgages behind the bank loans. The major factor influencing the lender's willingness to loan against these short-term rentals was our business history. This particular lender wanted to see at least 1 year of operating history in order to lend against the portfolio. The lender was looking for demonstration of our ability to manage the cash flow through the seasonal income fluctuation in the portfolio. Now, it seems to me that the loan product you purchased is simply not matched to the type of business you're looking to operate. The loan terms you signed appear to be very clear on the restrictions. And since the lender is going to require long-term leases, there might be a possible workaround if you were to lease a block of apartments to an arm's-length corporate housing provider with a master lease agreement. That corporate housing provider could then in turn be responsible for keeping the units filled on a month-to-month basis. But I would want you to get some legal advice on that point if that's going to be an acceptable approach. You might see if the current lender has another loan product that would be better suited for your business. You're probably going to pay a higher interest rate, but there might be a way to negotiate away the prepayment penalty by keeping the loan with the same bank. And failing those types of remedies, you're probably going to need to get the building leased fully with long-term leases to stabilize the situation and put out the fire. Short-term rentals are getting a lot of attention these days, and I talk to so many people that are looking to jump in. This question should serve as a cautionary tale to all of our listeners, that this is something you have to pay very close attention to. Lenders are not enamored with the short-term rental lease model. I want to thank you, Gonzalo, for a fantastic question. And for the listeners at home, have a great rest of your day. Go make some great things happen. And we'll talk to you again tomorrow.